Preparation is half the battle when it comes to job interviews, and knowing what to expect is the very first step. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the product management interview process at Google end to end. We'll cover how to get referred or recruited into a role, how to handle your recruiter phone screen, how to ace your technical interviews, what to expect from the full loop or final round interviews, what to do while you're waiting around for your interview results, and how hiring committees work. Make sure you stick around all the way till the end and you'll learn all of my best offer negotiation tips for product manager roles at Google, regardless of level or your years of experience. These tips always work. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the Pocketboard channel, where industry mentors share their hard-earned lessons learned, guidance, and mentorship to help you achieve your current professional goals. My name is Erika, and I'm the founder of Pocketboard, and I'm also a career coach and an interview mentor on Pocketboard. I also was a Google hiring manager for product managers, program managers, technical program managers, and test engineers. I love empowering people to show up prepared and confident for their job interviews, because when I landed my job at Google almost 10 years ago, it completely changed the trajectory of my career, and I look forward to giving others the same opportunity. To date, I've interview coached over 50 candidates who have landed jobs at Apple, Amazon, Meta, Google, and other top-tier tech companies. So before we dive into the process end to end, I want to dive first into a quick primer on what product managers are and what they do. First, product managers are responsible for the user. Their job is to deliver extraordinary value to users. They do this by understanding the market, developing a product strategy, talking to users, designing features, designing an MVP prototype, and then designing additional features to continue driving value for the users. As they develop those features, they are responsible for the grooming of the backlog and the prioritization that engineering teams use to decide what they're going to build when. Product managers have ultimate responsibility for the success of their products. If you're not sure if you're interested in or if you're interviewing for a technical program manager role, a product manager role, a technical product manager role, or a program management role, I have a great video that I'll link above that talks about the differences in each of these roles so that you can kind of disambiguate for yourself before you dive into this longer video. Google tend to have very centralized hiring practices. They have a bar, they have specific skills and competencies they want to see, and they want to make sure that every product manager is meeting that bar. So they have a more central process, and that is what we will focus on in this video. So at Google, your product managers are going to be deeply technical. They probably have computer science or other technical backgrounds. They were probably a practicing engineer for some period of time. Because the bar for product managers at Google is so technical, there are differences in the interview process that involve more technical interviews. I will go into those more later. All right, so step one is to get in the interview funnel. There are really 3 ways to get into the interview funnel. And I'm going to describe those 3 ways in kind of using a 2x2, which is very common for product managers. So I'm already helping you prep. So I'm going to use a 2x2 matrix of the amount of effort that you're going to have to do and the probability that it's going to actually get you into the hiring funnel. So the first way of getting into the hiring funnel is to get recruited. This is when a recruiter sends you a LinkedIn email or an email and says, hey, we're interested in you. This is the lowest effort, highest probability way to get into the interview funnel. However, it is also the least likely to happen. I don't know about you, but anytime I want a job, no one's reaching out. And every time I'm not looking, recruiters are sending me emails every day. So if you are getting recruited, take the bait, jump on it, go into the process. It's the fastest and easiest way to get into the process. However, the majority of you are probably not getting recruited, and that's fine too. So the lowest effort thing to do that I see a lot of candidates do that actually has the lowest probability of getting you into the funnel is to cold apply. The challenge with this method is that the majority of applications are not reviewed by humans. Every FAANG company has tens of thousands of applicants on a daily or even monthly basis. The way that they handle that volume is by using robots that are keyword machines to look through the resumes of people that have applied and more or less use an algorithm to decide if you are going to get rejected or move forward in the process. Great candidates get rejected by the robots. And so the reason that this method, cold applying, has the lowest probability is because robots are heartless and they don't necessarily see all your special sparkle, and so they aren't necessarily going to be the highest fidelity way to get you into the interview funnel. The third method is actually getting referred into the company, and this can be by someone you know, or there are a lot of other ways to get referred in today's day and age that are not frowned upon. So getting referred tends to have a little bit more effort, but it also has a significantly higher probability. The effort is a little bit higher because you're going to have to network your way into getting that referral. But the probability is a lot higher than cold applying because every FANG company has a guarantee to its employees, for the most part, that if they refer someone, those applications will be reviewed by a human. I don't know about you, but I prefer to have a human look at my application. Getting referred is the kind of value play when it comes to getting into the hiring funnel. It's a little bit more effort than cold applying. It has a higher probability of getting you into the funnel, and it doesn't rely on the chance that a recruiter reaches out to you. So I'm going to walk through a couple of different ways to get referred. Obviously, if you know someone at the company, the best thing you can do is ask them to refer you. Most employees are given referral bonuses if you get hired at the company. And so you'll find that most people that know you are willing to refer you. When you reach out to somebody to get them to refer you, make sure you include the URL to the job that you're applying for, and make sure that you include your resume. These are things that they have to add in the form that they have to fill out to refer you, so it just makes it a lot easier for them. If you don't know anyone, there are a few places on the internet that make it really easy to ask a stranger to refer you. Of course, remember I just said most employees get paid if you get hired. And so it's kind of a low effort thing for employees to do to refer you. And part of the referral form usually asks how well they know you. And so they're not being put in a position of lying or saying that they know you well when they don't, but it does ensure that a human looks at your resume. So a couple of places on the internet. The first place is Reddit. There are usually subreddits that are focused on each of these companies. You can ask someone to refer you. A second place on the internet is Glassdoor. A third place on the internet is Team Blind. The web address is teamblind.com. Blind is a little bit tricky because it's a little bit trolly, and there are some social conventions around the way that you make forum posts in Team Blind that may be hard for you to figure out at first. Read a few forum posts before you post asking for a referral to make sure you're following the rules of the community that are somewhat unwritten. The last way of getting referred that I would recommend is through any sort of career searching groups that you're part of. Facebook groups for product managers. There's the Women in Product Facebook group. There are Slack communities of job seekers. If you're part of any of these, just don't be bashful and go ahead and ask. You never know what people are going to say. And like I said, this is the value play in terms of actually getting into the funnel, which is your ultimate goal at step one. All right, so you have gotten into the hiring funnel either by getting referred, getting recruited, or cold applying. And now it is a question of the waiting game. The waiting game can be the hardest part for people, even harder than the interviews, because the anticipation is killing you. What I'm going to do in this section is talk about what's actually happening in the background while you're waiting, and I hope that knowing what's happening within the company will give you some calm, cool comfort to allow you to survive the waiting game. First thing I want to tell you is that if you are waiting, you should be grateful. Robots are very, very fast at rejecting people. In fact, most people will get rejected within 24 hours. The majority of them will get rejected within 15 to 30 minutes if the robot screens you out. So if it's been more than a day or two and you haven't heard back, that actually means that a human is probably looking at your application. So first rule of thumb is just not worry about the fact that they're not getting back to you immediately. So in the background, recruiters are actually reviewing your resume. This can take somewhere between 0 days and 2 weeks. And any time in between that, you should avoid panicking. Stay calm, stay cool, stay collected. If your application has been in progress for more than 2 weeks and you haven't heard back, most likely that means you are going to get rejected or ghosted. I'm telling you this so that you can move forward in your job search, but give it a full 2 weeks. Before we go any further, please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so that you get notified every time we drop a new video that can help you in your career. Like this video to cheer us on. The recruiter screen. The recruiter screen is not a skill assessment, but it can actually result in you getting removed from the process. So that's what we're going to focus on today. I call recruiter screens red flag interviews. And the reason that I call them that is that recruiters are looking for red flags that would disqualify you from moving forward in the process. Some examples of red flags that you might bring up in the interview include, the most simple one is being a jerk. The second one is actually not looking for a job. A surprising number of people will get on the phone with a recruiter and express that they aren't actually interested in moving forward. The third thing can be that your resume and your application doesn't actually match the articulation and the stories that you tell about your career. So looking for people that are not necessarily being upfront and honest about their experiences and their fit for the role. And the fourth thing is a compensation mismatch. So those are the 4 signals that recruiters are really looking for. And if any of those red flags come up, you may not move forward in the process. Recruiter screens are 15 to 30 minutes long, and they're typically on the phone. The types of questions that you're going to be asked in the recruiter screen include questions like, tell me about yourself. I'm going to link a video above about how to answer that question. The second type of question you're going to be asked is, why do you want to work here? Why do you want to work at this company? Or why do you want to work in this role? I'm going to link another video above that tells you how to answer the why do you want to work here question. This is another one that you're going to get a lot of reuse out of, so it's worth watching the video and formulating how you're going to answer both tell me about yourself and why do you want to work here. The third type of question that the recruiter is going to ask is the trickiest of them all, and this is about compensation. Before I dive into how to handle the compensation question, I want to talk about the recruiter that you're talking to and why they matter in the process. So that recruiter is going to be your assigned recruiter for your entire process. The same person is going to be the one consistent voice and ally that you have in the process. So you should treat them as your ally in every step of the process, with the exception of offer negotiation, which is the last step in the process. We'll get there in a few minutes. They're your lifeline. Give them as much information to help them advocate for you, to help them get excited about you as a candidate, to help them negotiate on your behalf within the company. When you get asked about your compensation expectations in the recruiter screen, the only thing I want you to do is not share any numbers. Not one number, not a range of numbers. You will give no numbers when you are asked about compensation expectations. Instead, I want you to explain to them the factors that will influence whether or not you would want to move forward in the process. For example, right now I'm looking for a role that allows me to focus on consumer products and work on a team with more front-end focused engineers. Those are the key factors for me in making this decision. And when we get to the point that there is an offer on the table, I would be delighted to talk to you about my compensation expectations and whether or not the offer is a fit for me. In the meantime, can you please share with me the compensation bands for this role that I'm interviewing for? The reason you're going to ask for compensation bands is that in the state of California, it is required for employers to share your compensation band with you, whether you're interviewing or you're an employee. So you should definitely ask for the compensation bands, and then that way you can let them know generally if this compensation band is in the range or ballpark of what will work for you. That allows them to get that signal on whether or not there's a red flag on compensation. If you generally tell them that this fits within your compensation expectations, but you want to talk about details later, that allows them to screen you in and move forward without you divulging your specific salary expectation numbers. The second thing you should ask for when you're asking about compensation bands, and this kind of goes hand in hand, is ask for the level that you're interviewing at or the leveling range. At all of the FANG companies, they have a numerical level that is associated with your role when you get hired. That level determines the scope and responsibilities that you have and also the compensation that you make. There is a ton of incredible data on the internet that is very easy to find about typical salary, bonus, and equity compensation for each of those levels. So by asking about the levels, you will be able to do a little bit of research on your own on what the compensation expectation should be for that level if you do get the offer. As of right now, Google and Meta both do not require take-home assignments, but a lot of other top-tier tech companies do. This is your first phone screen. So Google and Meta's phone screens tend to be 45 minutes long, and they tend to be actually on the phone. Almost all product managers go through a bulk hiring process where their skills are assessed through the final round interviews, and then they're actually meeting the team or teams that they might be working with as a final step in the process. So you're going to be interviewing with a calibrated interviewer, not necessarily your future hiring manager. The general format of these phone screens is a couple of minutes in the beginning for an intro. The interviewer is really just trying to make you feel comfortable, but they may share some information about the product that you might be interviewing for, or themselves, or the team. And then the bulk of the interview is going to be them asking you questions, and I'll talk through what those specific question types are. And then usually they leave 3 to 5 minutes at the end, sometimes up to 7, for you to ask questions. So let's dive into the middle kind of meaty part of the interview, which is the actual skill assessment questions. The most common question types that you're going to get in a phone screen are going to be estimation questions, product design questions, technical conveyance questions, or product strategy questions. You may also get behavioral questions, data analysis. They're just a lot less common in the phone screen. I'll explain very briefly about each of these interview types. There's a ton of great content on the internet about each of these, but just to give a TLDR, estimation questions are going to be estimate how much storage capacity it takes to store all of YouTube's videos. These questions are intended to understand if, without the right answer, you're able to reason your way into a reasonable answer. The second question type that I mentioned, product design, is going to be pervasive through all product management interviews at FANG companies. And these are going to be questions like design a product that does X, or take a product that exists and improve it. And these are very systematic questions. There is a structured framework for how to answer them that are written down in books and all over the internet, something that I coach regularly. You will get a product design question. The third type of question that is probable is a technical conveyance question. Technical conveyance is assessing your understanding of technical concepts and your ability to convey them to non-technical people. The reason for this is that product managers are the hub of activity in product development. They talk to engineers, end users, customer support, and other non-technical people. So they need to understand if you can understand technical concepts and explain them. The fourth type of question that you might get in a Google phone screen is product strategy. And these will be questions like, what is the next company that Google should acquire? A note on response times. So you've just interviewed with one person for somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. Interviewers have 2 days to get feedback, 48 hours. Of course, not every interviewer actually does their interview feedback within 48 hours. And so you're going to have a little bit of the waiting game here as well. So if the interviewer has 2 days, but some people take 4 or 5 business days to get back to you, and let's say there's a weekend in there, it could be a week or more before you hear back from the recruiter on your interview. The strategy that I tell people to use here is, after your interview, send a thank you note through the recruiter. It will get to your interviewer. In that thank you note, you should do a little bit of research on anything you discussed with the interviewer that prompted some thoughts. Not just thanks for interviewing me, but maybe a little bit more that shows that you were engaged in the interview and that you learned something. Send that thank you note immediately after your interview, within a day or 2. Then wait for 4 to 5 business days before you reach out to the recruiter to ask them if there's any feedback or follow-up on your interview. The reason for this is that recruiters, they don't want to reach out to you until they actually have news for you. It's kind of a womp to get an email that's like, hey, let's talk on the phone. You get on the phone, they're like, no updates. So they try to avoid doing that because they know how hard the process already is emotionally for candidates. There are 3 possible outcomes from your phone screen. The first one is no hire. We're not going to move forward in the process. Usually you'll be told by the recruiter to wait 6 to 12 months to reapply. You will most likely not get any feedback on your interview performance. The second outcome is, let's move forward. We need more signal. There's only so much we can assess in a single phone screen. And because Google only has a single phone screen, there is a third outcome possible for Google where you are asked to do a second phone screen, even though that is not typical in their process. Remember that at Meta and Amazon, it's more typical to have a second phone screen. At Google, it is actually an exception case. We'll dive into that now. And if you're interviewing at Google, having a second phone screen is an exception case if there was not enough signal gathered in your initial phone screen. After this second phone screen, there are 2 possible outcomes. Either you're going to move forward to final rounds, or it's going to be a no hire decision where you're asked to reapply in 6 to 12 months. Final round interviews. Final rounds at Google are usually 5 interviews, 45 minutes each, 1 interview at a time. They used to be physically on site. You would fly in and you do the 5 interviews back to back. Today, they tend to be virtual and they tend to be split over 2 days. So 3-2 or 2-3. Some teams are doing on-sites. For Google, you're likely going through a bulk product management hiring process. And those interviewers will not be people that you will probably be working with day to day. They are calibrated interviewers. If you pass the final rounds, team matching, where you actually meet your team, will happen next. All of the interview question types that you were asked in your phone screens are fair game for your final rounds. One difference is that Google does require highly technical product managers, and so the Google final rounds will include a system design interview. This is where you'll be asked to describe either a system that you've worked on or a canonical system, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, some canonical system that most users have used. Describe that system from a system design perspective. What are the major system components? What are the design considerations? And how do you make trade-offs and mitigate those system design considerations? It's really an interview that's focused on your leadership and focused on how you solve problems. At Google, there is a very specific interview type for this slot. It's called General Cognitive Abilities, GCA. Tons of videos about this on the internet. These are my favorite type of interviews personally because you never know what you're gonna get, and they're just fun to do with the interviewer and fun to do as an interviewer. So those interviews can be really difficult to prepare for, but if you come in with the right attitude, they tend to be very fun. Read more about that if you're interviewing at Google. The waiting game. All right, I've already told you how to prepare yourself emotionally for the waiting game by understanding what's happening in the background. I'm going to dive into exactly what's happening with all of your interviewers and their feedback and why the recruiter isn't reaching out to you immediately on the Friday afternoon of your interviews. Interviewers usually have 48 hours, 2 business days to get in their feedback. Some of them are humans, and they take a little bit longer than that because they have a lot of other priorities. The recruiter has to collect all 7 interviewer feedback before they can reach out to you to let you know how you performed in your interviews. So that can result in a week or more of a delay in getting back to you about your interview performance. To help you wait patiently, calmly, coolly, confidently, and collectedly, the number one tip I have for you is to take a couple days to do research on any of the interesting conversations that you had in the interview process. Send non-generic thank you notes to each interviewer via the recruiter. Interviewers are not going to give you their email addresses. Send them to the recruiter. They'll make their way to the interviewers. And then wait 4 days minimum, 7 days optimal, business days, to follow up with your recruiter to understand what happened in your interview process and whether you're moving forward. The other thing that I find people not doing very effectively in the waiting timeline is celebrating. Most of you have watched countless YouTube videos, have done peer interview mocks, have hired a mentor or coach to help you prepare for your interview process. Some people take as little as a few days. The majority of people take weeks or even months to prepare for this. You have earned a pat on the back. So the other thing you can be doing during the waiting game is just celebrating. Most people find that the interview process is rewarding in and of itself, independent of the outcome. Obviously, everyone wants to get the job, but most people that I have worked with will express to me that the process of preparing for the job actually made them a better product manager. So relish in the fact that you've actually done some skill development in addition to giving yourself an opportunity to take a new role that you may be really excited about, and actually celebrate. If you're interviewing at Google, you will have a team matching process. Team matching is the process by which you actually get the opportunity to interview a team that wants a product manager like you, and they get a chance to interview you to see if you're going to be a good fit for their team. At this point, you have passed the Google gauntlet of interviews around your skills, and now it is a question of where in the organization do you best fit. In the team matching process, the recruiter is taking your entire interview performance, your application, your resume, and they're showing it to teams that have open headcount for product managers at the level that you've been assessed at. You can kind of consider this professional dating. Once a team expresses interest to the recruiter will set you up with a 30 to 45 minute meeting with the hiring manager for that role. My tip to you is to treat this like an interview and keep it highly professional. A lot of people are so exhausted from the interview gauntlet at this point that they tend to let their guard down in the team match interviews. And also, recruiters often call it coffee chats, implying that it's a lot less formal than it actually is. So you should expect behavioral questions, and you should also even expect some technical questions that are specific to that team and that role. Treat this like an interview. Do not let your guard down. Do not become less formal in your articulation. I like to think of team matching as an opportunity to ask really specific questions. Waiting rules are about 4 to 5 days, business days here. There's only one person that has to get back, but that person may actually have to network within the team to show your application and to decide with a broader group of people if they're ready to move forward in the process. There are 2 possible outcomes for a team matching discussion. One is we're going to pass on this person. It's actually not a good fit. That is not a pass that is going to end your candidacy at Google. That just is a pass for that team. I have candidates that panic if they get passes multiple times in a row for teams and they think that, okay, they're not going to hire me anymore. That is not true. You have passed the bar for getting hired at Google, and it's really a question of finding the right team. Some people's team matching process takes days or even weeks. The majority of people's take months. 2, 4, 6 months. The second possible outcome from your team matching interview is we really like you, so if you really like us, we want to go to hiring committee and move forward with your candidacy. Hiring committee. You can think of the hiring committee as an independent branch of government, and their job is to make the final decision about whether you're going to get an offer, what the level is that you're going to get offered at, and the compensation package that you are going to get offered if you get hired. At some FANG companies, and at Google increasingly, hiring managers actually have to provide a statement of support. This statement of support is intended to show why they're choosing you over all other available candidates. And it includes elements of your application, your background, and your interview performance. There is nothing that you have to do for this process. I'm only mentioning it to you so that you understand that it exists and that it can add time to the process. Some hiring managers are on top of it, and they write these statements of support as soon as they decide that they want to move forward. Some of them, it takes a week or even 2 weeks to write the statement of support, which will delay the amount of time that it takes for you to actually get the final feedback on whether you're getting an offer and what that offer looks like. Hiring committee are very senior product managers, so they only meet once a week, so that can also have an impact on the timeline here. Oftentimes people will get really nervous in this time because it's another waiting game, and they don't understand that not only is there potentially a statement of support delaying even going to hiring committee, but there's a packet that has to get put together by your recruiter, which includes all of your interview performance and really makes it easy for hiring committee to efficiently make decisions. And that has to get prepared before you can even go to hiring committee, which only meets once per week. So that can cause some cycle time. There are 3 possible outcomes from hiring committee. The first is no hire. Hiring committee can decide to veto if they believe that you are not a fit long-term, even if the interview team disagrees. You will not know if hiring committee is overriding the interview committee. You will not get any feedback on why this is, but you will once again get encouraged to reapply within 6 or 12 months. The second possible outcome from hiring committee is that we need more signal. The interview team may be satisfied with the signal that they collected, but the hiring committee may disagree. They want to make really solid hiring decisions, so you may get asked to do 1 or even 2 more interviews. Those interviews can be gathering more skill signals, or they could actually be interviews that are trying to properly assess your level. The third possible outcome from hiring committee is that you're moving forward in the process and you are about to get an offer. The offer process. So the logistics of the process are the recruiter is going to email you and ask to set up a time to reconnect. Some recruiters will tell you in their communication that you passed hiring committee, others will not. The point that I'm making here is don't sweat what don't read into, don't read between the lines, whatever. If you get an email from a recruiter saying set up time, just set up time. In the conversation with the recruiter, they are going to give you a verbal offer. They're going to talk you through the total compensation package, each of the components, and what you're being offered. This is the first time in this entire process that you need to stop treating the recruiter as your ride or die ally. Their job at this point is to get you to accept the first offer. This makes the process significantly more efficient. They think the offer they're giving you is fair, and their job is to get you to accept that offer. But we all know the first offer is never the best offer. So you need to not accept the first offer. I'm going to explain to you why it's so important to negotiate. Hopefully that will help you overcome the hump and get comfortable with the idea that you need to negotiate. The majority of the work that a product manager does from an execution perspective is alignment. And what does it take to align? It takes negotiation. So I need to know that you can negotiate. And the first opportunity that I have to see you actually negotiating in action, not in a behavioral interview question, but in action, is when I give you this offer and we see what you do. So as a hiring manager, I want to see you negotiate. My first tip is do not accept the offer on the call. Don't tell them you're leaning towards accepting. Don't gasp and say, wow, that's the most money I'll ever make. Do not react to the initial offer other than to say thank you for walking through that with me, and then share with them some anecdotes about your interview process that reinforces your interest in the role, your fit for the role, and even share some anecdotes about conversations that you had in the interview process that made you think that you're a really good fit for this team and this role. You're telling them the role is a good fit. Now all we got to figure out is this offer bit. If you haven't already asked for compensation bands in the initial recruiter screen, now is the time to ask for the compensation bands so that you have more information going into your actual future negotiation. Let them know that you're going to think on it and assess the offer in more detail, and that you'd like to set up time to follow up. Usually a good amount of time for follow-up is 2 to 3 days. They're going to want to know where you're standing with this offer in 2 to 3 days. In those 2 to 3 days, you have 3 jobs. One is to gather data to understand where this offer fits within the compensation bands and within what people on the internet are sharing they're making for a product manager at the level that you just got offered. The second thing you're going to be doing in those 2 to 3 days is getting your mindset right. I work with a lot of candidates that come from underrepresented backgrounds, women, minorities, and the number one challenge is people coming in with a scarcity mindset, this sense that I just really want this job, I don't even care. You need to reset your mindset to a mindset of abundance, a mindset that there is so much more to be gained here, and a mindset of I am showing them my abilities by negotiating this job offer. So second thing is mindset. The third thing you're going to be doing in these 2 to 3 days is preparing, practicing. You need to be ready to handle all of the exception cases that the recruiter is going to throw at you. You probably have negotiated compensation, I don't know, a few times in your career. I've probably done it 5 times in my career. Recruiters negotiate compensation every single business day. 20, 80 hours of the year. They are thinking about compensation and how to improve their performance in offer negotiations. Because remember, their job is to get you to take that first offer. I like to give the analogy of ultra marathoners and turkey trotters. I don't know about you, but I tend to run about 1 road race a year. Your recruiter is more like an ultra marathoner. They're training every single day on how to negotiate offers. You're coming in a little winded, they aren't even sweating. So having a coach or a mentor walk you through not just the data, but adjusting your mindset and how to handle the questions and the retorts that they're going to bring up in your conversation so that you can confidently stick your ground and land a better offer is priceless. Even the best tennis players in the world have coaches. The best NBA, LeBron James has coaches. So I want you to have a coach going into this very high stakes negotiation. We have a number of mentors on Pocketboard who are recruiters at top tier tech companies, and they specialize in teaching people how to effectively negotiate their offers. Our mentees have increased their offer from the initial offer to the offer they accepted anywhere from $30,000 a year on the low end to $70,000 a year on the high end, and we want to push that even further. All right, that brings us to the end of our video. If you want me or other Pocketboard mentors to make more helpful videos like this one, please subscribe and ring the bell so that you can get notified every time we push a new video and get ahead of other candidates. If you found this video helpful in any way, please give us a like. It really cheers us on and helps us out. Do not be shy about using the comment section below. Comment ideas, thoughts, follow-up questions. We respond to to every comment. And if you're actively in the interview process and you're experiencing exactly what I just talked about or anything different from what I just talked about, please share it in the comments below because you can tremendously help another person who's coming after you in the interview process. We will update the description of this video with any major changes that are happening to the process. I'm Erika G, and you can find tons of other videos that I've made on this channel about job interviews and the job hunting process in general, regardless of the role or company that you're interviewing at. If you'd like to schedule one-on-one time with me, you can find me at the link in the description and book a mentoring session with me as soon as tomorrow. Best of luck in your interview process, and remember to enjoy the journey.